All right, excellent. Welcome everybody to our first virtual session. We're extremely excited about our new dual degree partnership with Columbia Engineering. Specifically, this session is going to cover the MS in Climate and MS in Carbon Management dual degrees opportunity here at Columbia Climate School and Columbia Engineering. You are in for a treat because we have two of our esteemed faculty joining us, and also joining us is our Associate Dean of Enrollment at Columbia Engineering, Gabby Gannon. So welcome everybody. I like to do a shameless audio test for our audience and just confirm everybody can hear us okay. So in the Q&A chat box, and that's what you will be using to ask questions, if you can type in the Q&A where you are joining us from, city, state, country, perhaps. We love to see just the geographic diversity and interest that Columbia University attracts. So feel free to type in the Q&A where you are joining us from. We love to see it. Excellent. Oh, Ryan Harlem, we've got a neighbor here. India, welcome. Thailand, Ann Arbor, Michigan. Hey, Jason's going to be happy about that. That's where he did his PhD at Ann Arbor in Michigan. Go Blue. We got Brooklyn in the house, Athens, Greece. Excellent. Rome from Johannesburg. Another Brooklyn, my colleague Damaris Diaz, who's managing the Q&A, is a Brooklyn native. So welcome, welcome. And then we have Lima, Peru. Hey, that's a good showing. That's a nice distribution of continents. So let's go ahead and we're going to dive in now. I'll just briefly go over the agenda. And forgive me, before we officially begin, one thing I'll note is this session is going to be a webinar. So please, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the Q&A. You can feel free to type your questions as we are giving our presentation, but we will reserve the open-ended Q&A addressing the questions toward the second half of the presentation. But again, feel free to use the Q&A function as you have any questions. So just to briefly share what we will be covering today, we're going to go ahead and give you kind of a broad overview of both Columbia Climate School and Columbia Engineering. We're then going to perform a bit more of a deep dive on this dual degree curriculum. We'll touch on a little bit more of the contours of the MS in Climate and the MS in Carbon Management in particular. And then we're going to talk about professional development opportunities and career opportunities, both at Columbia Climate School as well as Columbia Engineering. And we will wrap up the presentation with financial aid and my favorite section, the application process. I always think that's the most riveting section. So we'll go ahead and what I would love to do now is formally introduce our faculty that are joining us today. So first we'll begin with Jason Smerdon, who is professor of climate within Columbia Climate School, as well as co-senior director for education and co-director of the MS in Climate program. He teaches courses on climate, environmental change, and sustainable development to both the undergraduate and graduate learning communities. Professor Smerdon also lectures widely in public and private settings on the subject of climate change and its social dimensions. Professor Smerdon's research focuses on climate variability and change during the past several millennia and how past climate can help us understand future climate change. Also joining us today is Shana Kelly, who is Assistant Professor of Earth and Environmental Engineering here at Columbia Engineering and Director of the Master of Science in Carbon Management program. Professor Kelly and her research group investigate submicron to subsurface transport phenomena and geologic and engineered porous media for sustainable energy and environmental applications, including subsurface carbon storage and mineralization. This research in this space will play a critical role in the next frontier of sustainable energy practices, particularly subsurface activities and unconventional resource recovery. So essentially, we have a carbon capture guru among us. So let's go ahead and get started. And what I'm going to go ahead and begin with is just briefly going over Columbia Climate School, and then my colleague Gabby Gannon will discuss Columbia Engineering. But to anchor everybody with a little bit of background in Columbia Climate School, first let's discuss Columbia University itself. So the university the fifth oldest institution in the country, the oldest here in the state of New York. It's a major research institution. When you say Columbia University, think of it as an umbrella term, and underneath that umbrella are over 20 different schools, the majority of them being professional graduate schools. And you can think of, for example, Columbia Business School or the School of International and Public Affairs, Columbia Engineering, of course, among one of those professional graduate schools. The newest school is Columbia Climate School. It was announced in 2020, formally launched in 2021. But what I like to say is, while Columbia Climate School is the newest school, it has decades of longstanding history within Columbia University as it relates to research in the climate space. So within Columbia Climate School is Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, which is celebrating its 75th anniversary. In fact, in the lower left corner, that's an aerial photo of Lamont. It's a 189-acre research campus, about 45 minutes north of our Morningside Heights campus. And Columbia Climate School was also developed out of what was one of the largest research centers at Columbia University, which was the Earth Institute. So we have a long-standing history in the climate space. And just to give you an idea of our mission, the world requires knowledgeable leaders to work with businesses, communities, governments, and civil society to address the climate crisis. Columbia Climate School's graduate degree programs and other learning opportunities provide an interdisciplinary knowledge base for climate leaders with diverse interests and backgrounds. The word interdisciplinary is critical. That's a key ingredient of what makes Columbia Climate School especially incredibly unique. Our students are very interdisciplinary in nature. They come to our programs from both the social sciences and natural sciences. We have students that may have a focus in political science, material engineering, earth and environmental sciences, but also our faculty are incredibly interdisciplinary in nature. Obviously, Professor Smerdon is a classic has a classic background anchored in the environmental sciences, but we also have faculty that are have backgrounds in political science, have backgrounds in urban planning. So it's an incredibly diverse array of both academics and students embedded within Columbia Climate School. And it has to be diverse because climate touches everything. So again, interdisciplinary is a key ingredient whenever you think of Columbia Climate School. I'll now transition to Gabby Gannon to share a little bit more about Columbia Engineering, and I'll also progress the slides, Gabby. So whenever you're for next, just let me know.
Thank you. Thank you. So yes, I'm going to tell you all a little bit about Columbia Engineering. The Fu Foundation School of Engineering and Applied Science is our formal name, and we were founded in 1864. And since 1864, Columbia Engineering has been a resource to the world for major advances in human progress. On the next slide, I'm going to walk you through a little bit about our history, because even prior to the creation of the School of Mines, which is what we were originally known as, some of Columbia's earliest alumni were pioneering entrepreneurs and engineers. Engineering is a foundation of the school of Columbia University, and you really see it in so many fields. For example, when I refer back to some of our earliest alumni, those includes individuals such as John Stevens, who graduated in 1768 and developed steam engines that powered both the first steamships to navigate the open ocean and the first steam locomotive. But while we have a long history, Columbia is rooted here in New York City, and we are not done innovating by any means. You can see it through the creation of new schools like Columbia Climate School. You can see it through new degree programs like this dual degree program we are offering, and you can see it physically. Our 17-acre Manhattanville campus, you'll see that on the right side, features the new Jerome L. Green Science Center. And this is home to many of our interdisciplinary research, which I know Alfred just spoke about. And interdisciplinary research is really important to all of us here at Columbia, because there are so many opportunities for crossover and collaboration. And so now I think Alfred's going to tell you a little bit more about our collaboration. Oh, you're muted, Alfred, sorry.
Thank you, Gabby. So one thing we want to note before we go into a deep dive of kind of the curriculum itself within each degree program, there are two potential options that you could pursue. So one thing that's important to note within this dual degree is while you are pursuing this, you are going to be in residence in a single professional school in each year. So you could potentially begin this dual degree option with the MS in Climate program. That would be a fall start. You would continue in the spring. And in the summer semester, you could pursue a practical experience. So any of the students on the call today, if you're an international student, if you're planning on pursuing this degree on an F1 student visa, for example, we would actually recommend starting with the climate school if you're interested in CPT. So again, you could begin this journey with the MS in Climate program for your first year, and then continue into the MS in Carbon Management program with Columbia Engineering in your second year, which is going to be a 2-semester sequence. That would be option one. Alternatively, you could begin the program with Columbia Engineering. Again, you would begin in this program always begins in the fall. You would continue in the spring. The summer could be your time off for a brief reprieve, and then you would continue with Columbia Climate School's MS in Climate program in your second fall and your second spring. And again, one thing very important to note, this dual degree program requires that you're in residence in a single school. So you will not be in both Columbia Engineering and Columbia Climate School in your first semester, mixing the courses between the two programs. You're going to be either in one school or the other, pursuing either the MS in Carbon Management or the MS in Climate. But again, the option could be to begin with Columbia Engineering, or alternatively, to begin with Columbia Climate School. Now, to briefly discuss the MS in Climate program and the contours of it, this is one of our newest degree programs. Actually, we're very excited. We just launched a second degree program in February, but the MS in Climate program was formally announced in September of 2024. We're going to be welcoming our inaugural class in fall 2025. This is going to be a STEM designated professional degree programs that gives graduates from diverse backgrounds an in-depth training in specific areas of climate expertise and prepares them to be climate leaders at community, state, and international levels. The MS in Climate program does have a climate core, and included within that climate core is a dynamics of climate variability and change course. This is going to be largely kind of teaching you the physics behind climate change. I always like to say, if somebody stops you on the street and says, "Do you believe in climate change?" and your response is yes, and then they say why, this is the course that's going to give you the why. We also have climate change mitigation and climate change adaptation built within that core sequence. These are obviously the founding principles of how to address climate change. We also have a climate justice theory, practice, and policy course baked into that climate core, as we feel if you are going to be a climate professional, you have to have a deep understanding of how different communities are affected by climate change. And then finally, forgive me, it's quantitative methods. There's going to be a quantitative methods course in that final sequence that is going to be largely utilizing the computer language program R, and you're going to be looking at large climate data sets, understanding how to make decisions based off of that climate data. We also have elective options that are very broad at Columbia Climate School. As I noted, our school's ethos is all about being interdisciplinary, and these elective options range from climate mobility to Black ecologies, financing renewable energy. So if any of you joining us today also have kind of this interest in climate finance, we have some really dynamic climate finance elective courses being offered. We also have courses in climate and food systems, climate and disaster management. Interestingly, a fun fact is that about a third of the carbon released each year relates to the food system. That's something I recently learned about when one of our really popular professors joined us a couple years ago, Professor Jessica Fanzo. So we have some really dynamic electives that you can pursue while in the MS Climate program. And now I will transition over to Professor Shana Kelly, who will share a little bit more about the MS in Carbon Management.
Thank you, Alfred. Can you hear me? Great. Yes, so the As part of the Masters in Carbon Management, or MCM, you actually sit within the Department of Earth and Environmental Engineering, where your classmates and cohort could be studying any of the below tracks. So it's really a wonderful cohort of people studying things from water resources and climate risks to sustainable energy to sustainable mining and materials to, of course, carbon management. And it makes a really nice integrated cohort. Next. So here's just a blurb, more or less, from our website about the program, and I'll just parse through it. Essentially, in the MCM program, it's been created to provide a unique educational experience for students that have actually a wide range of backgrounds, as well as that are interested in very different career paths. For example, we'll have some students that do have engineering backgrounds, but then many others that maybe come from maybe a science or like a geology or geophysics background, as well as quite a few that have more of even a finance or even a computer science background. So it's a very diverse cohort. Um, so the courses taught in this program, or at least the core courses, are based around carbon capture, utilization, and storage technologies, and sort of the physical chemical mechanisms behind those. Um, they're also designed to be highly interdisciplinary, so as to create an environment that prepares students for a wide variety of uh, potential career paths, as well as just a toolkit of various, quantitative strategies to approach the problems at hand. Next. So a little more specifically, here is a very brief summary of our core courses. Um, Essentially, the core courses you would take as part of the MCM are Introduction to Carbon Management, which is an excellent class that sort of is foundational for prepping the landscape. Then there are specific classes in carbon storage and carbon capture, as well as CO2 utilization and conversion, all taught by faculty that have world-class research expertise, as well as often industrial experience in these fields. Then there are a diverse set of electives, more than I can list here, so I just put it as one bullet point. But essentially, the program is very bespoke that you can choose your electives to go in suit with your career paths. So for example, if you can choose electives within the School of Engineering, Earth Science, or Policy, Law, and Economics, depending on the flavor of the program you wish to take. Then for students that are interested, you can also take research credits as a class, and you can do traditionally in the MCM up to 6 credits of this. And for some students, this is a great way to prepare for a PhD level experience, or just to get research experience, which is excellent too. Here on the right is my class from the fall to 2023 carbon storage class. After our final presentations, everyone was excited, and we got in front of the class with a picture. Yeah, next. Just a blurb about research again. This is something people often have questions about. Again, you can actually use research towards credit, which goes also towards a thesis. And here you can see by these little statistics at the bottom here that throughout the years, we always have a very significant fraction of students that opt to participate in research. And here's just a picture of various flavors of research, ranging from meetings to microscope time to looking at water chemistry analysis. Next. And only a few more slides here, but essentially one thing is that I really enjoy as part of our program, as well as most of the programs at Columbia, to be frank, is that we have access to world-class seminars and colloquiums. Here's just an example of one from last year, where through our department's Lenfest Center for Sustainable Energy, which is also part of the climate school, that we brought in quite a few world-class speakers on everything from water to subsurface carbon sequestration. Next. And then finally, good to have social events too. Here at Columbia, we try to foster a sense of community, and here's two events that are just specific to EEE, our Earth Environmental Engineering. So as part of the MCM, of course, you'd be welcome to participate in things like our book club, as well as some of these cultural festivals that we hold, such as here you can see a Mid-Autumn Festival and welcome event. Yeah, thank you. I'll give it back to Alfred.
Thank you, Professor Kelly. So now we're gonna go ahead and transition briefly to hearing more about kind of career resources and professional development opportunities within each school. So I like to highlight here at Columbia Climate School, we do have a dedicated career management office that works very closely with you. Of course, they have employer info sessions, one-on-one alumni mentorship program that's quite robust. You might think to yourself, well, Alfred, you're a brand new school. How do you have an alumni mentorship program? Interestingly, our program itself has been in existence for about 15 years. It used to the forgive me, we have several programs that existed prior to the launch of the climate school, and we also have partner programs. So we have students in a variety of degree programs that participate in alumni mentorship that oftentimes work in the environmental policy space or the sustainability space. We also have a sustainability skills seminar series that's quite popular. This can be anything from sustainability consulting or lead certification, but we bring practitioners onto campus either in the evenings or on the weekends to host different seminars. We also have the All Ivy Environmental and Sustainable Development Career Fair. This has been happening for well over a decade. It attracts nearly 100 employers, and over 1,000 students from across the Ivy League descend upon the Columbia University campus for this very kind of curated career fair experience. We also have mock interviews that we host and an exclusive responsive job board for our students. To give you an idea of the sectors of employment, this is from 2022 and 2023. Again, this isn't for the MS in Climate program as it's a new program, but to give you an idea of where our Columbia Climate School alumni most recently have gone to, it's an interesting mix, 31% private sector. I understand our class of 2024 is actually going to see a larger section of the pie, so to speak, in private sector. We also have about 21% public sector. Nonprofit NGOs also make up a significant space. And then just to give you another bit of flavor in terms of the type of roles our students have secured. So for example, the World Bank is a climate policy analyst. McKinsey is a sustainability insight analyst. We have a couple students at Boston Consulting Group. And then of course we have students even in the local, state, and city level working in various climate related areas. And now I'll pass it over to Gabby to talk a little bit more about Columbia Engineering's resources.
Thank you, Alfred. So when I speak about the professional development and graduate career placement resources offered by Columbia, I really am speaking specifically about two offices that work together. They live within our engineering student affairs office, and those are graduate career placement and then professional development and leadership, which you'll also hear us refer to as PDL. So our professional development team works with incoming students and current students, offering sessions on building resumes, cover letters, and LinkedIn profiles, as well as topics like professional ethics and communications. The professional development team hosts events to help students put these skills into practice. There will be opportunities to meet other students and alumni, as well as industry contacts in the fields our students are looking to get into. They will get to start building their network. Then when we talk about graduate career placement, each program at Columbia Engineering has a dedicated career coach who works with students in that program as well as employers in that program's discipline. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that next, but I want to, before I do that, first tell you about our virtual resources. So in addition to two full, robust, different teams that are on campus to support you, we also have resources available to you 24/7. One of these is a trained AI system that can provide resume feedback. Students can log in at any time of the day, make resume revisions. There we go. Get real-time feedback from the system, and then right in the system, you can share these changes with your career coach, who will then get you additional feedback, during normal working hours. So there really is a comprehensive support system across professional development and graduate career placement for our students, available at any time, day or night. So on the next slide, you will see these graduate career placement coaches I mentioned. So as I said, every program has a career placement coach. Raina, she's there in the middle. She serves the Earth and Environmental Engineering Department and is an expert in your field. So this is not something that you'll see done at other schools. You may have somebody who is a career placement officer or coach for multiple disciplines or multiple schools. Here, you will have somebody whose focus is on your field and who's very familiar with those organizations that Alfred just listed, and who knows specifically what your needs are and what looking for a job. So now on the next slide, I'm going to tell you more about the Professional Development and Leadership Program. So PDL, as I mentioned, is a program that every master's student at Columbia Engineering participates in. This program begins before you even step foot on campus. It happens before you register for classes. It happens before you have paid a bill. It is the very first introduction to Columbia. It's the very first resource that we are giving you. So you will work with the PDL team. The PDL team will get you ready to start your job search when you arrive on campus. What many students don't know is that when you start your master's program, you almost immediately start the internship hunt. And so we want to make sure that when you get to us, when you get to campus, that you are ready for this. So the PDL team gets to know you, your background, what you're looking for. Based on that, they help you build out that resume, cover letters, LinkedIn profile, communication skills, and give you a chance to practice these skills. After those fundamental skills are picked up, during your first 2 semesters in your program, you choose some PDL electives where you want to focus your professional development. So on the next slide, you will see these lists of electives. So again, this PDL program, it is a program that every single master's student participates in. It's a mandatory program, but it is also a free program. It's really a gift to our students. And every student takes 10 courses in the program. And they are, boot camp style, 2 hours for one day. So I'm not talking, a semester long course here. But they are, little micro courses, opportunities for you to develop your competencies and your skills outside of your traditional classroom center. So in the center, you'll see some of the technical skills. On the top right, you'll see the job search skills, things like preparing for your interview, understanding the transition from student visa to work visa. In the bottom right, you'll see courses focused on you and your well-being. So you'll see things like sleep, stress, time management, and how to make sure you are taking care of yourself. So that is really kind of our robust professional development and career placement of resources. So on the next slide, I'm going to tell you how you can start your application on our end, because you will submit applications to both schools. So for the Columbia Engineering application, you first need to submit the online app. It's pretty straightforward. You will fill it out and submit everything online. You'll upload your transcripts from anywhere that you have attended. You will input 3 letters of recommendation providers. And we recommend that at least 2 of those be academic references. For the fall 2025 cycle, Columbia Engineering does not require the GRE. This is optional. And you'll also upload your personal statement, your resume, and if we require English language proficiency exams for students who were educated in select countries, then you will need to provide those scores. After you submit the application, you will also be asked to submit a video interview. So it's fairly straightforward. And then on the next slide, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the funding opportunities for master's students. We offer fellowships in engineering for eligible applicants. There are also part-time academic positions available on campus for our students. Many of our students work as course assistants. There's also grader rules. There's also potentially research assistants, paid research positions available in research labs around campus. And there may also be administrative positions available in different offices. All of those types of roles can be applied to after enrollment. If you are a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen, you can also apply for the FAFSA to access various federal student loans. And other options that many students take advantage of include private student loans, employer reimbursement programs, sponsorships, or military benefits. So now I'm going to hand it back to Alfred to tell you a little bit more about what the process looks like on the climate school side.
Thank you, Gabby. So in terms of our application process, also online, the online application, I want to just emphasize that our school takes a very holistic approach when evaluating candidates. So you'll every element that I'm about to describe here is going to be carefully assessed and evaluated, and there's not one component that's going to be the sole decision-making process. So in the online application, you'll upload your resume. We require 2 letters of recommendation. One must be academic if you've been enrolled in a college or university within the last 5 years. And I'm referring to an undergraduate college or university. So 2 letters of reference, but one must be academic if you've been enrolled in a college or university in the last 5 years. If it's been more than 5 years, you can submit 2 professional recommendations. That's completely fine. We also require that you upload your unofficial college transcripts to the online application system. If you attended multiple universities, so let's say you said, oh, Alfred, I went to NYU, and then I also did a master's degree at UC Berkeley. We would need both of those unofficial transcripts uploaded. We also require an English language test at the climate school. If English is not your native language, we actually provide, and you did not complete English as the language of instruction in your undergraduate university. At the climate school, we have 3 potential options. You could submit either a TOEFL, an IELTS, or alternatively, a third option, which is relatively unique among the Columbia professional schools. We would accept also Duolingo English test. In terms of the final component, I think a critical piece is that statement of purpose. The one element I want to note is that we have a unique deadline for the dual degree program. Both Columbia Engineering and Columbia Climate School's application deadline is April 1st, forgive me, for fall 2025 entry. So just bearing that in mind, if you guys are eager and interested in fall 25, April 1st is our deadline. In terms of, I just want to briefly discuss financial aid and fellowship opportunities. At Climate School, you are automatically considered for Climate School scholarships. This is a merit-based opportunity. If you're awarded one, they can range anywhere from $10,000 to upwards of $35,000. That would automatically be in your decision letter and your acceptance letter. We're also a member of the Yellow Ribbon Program. I saw in one of Gabby's slides referencing military benefits. We also have that option if you are qualified for the post 9/11 GI Bill, and 100%, you could potentially get the Yellow Ribbon Program. We also have external fellowship opportunities that we always like to highlight. So these are external databases. We always recommend students start researching those sooner rather than later. And then finally, for the MS in Climate program, we have a select number of students that could potentially receive what's called the Dean's Graduate Scholarship. And that is a scholarship award of $50,000. There's a limited number of those, but there's no separate application for that. You would simply, again, apply for admissions and automatically be reviewed. And of course, federal and private loans, many of our students utilize those through Student Financial Services. And fun fact, both Columbia Engineering and Columbia Climate School use the same Student Financial Service office to assist with financial aid questions. I'll just briefly note, we also have a very, I think many of our graduate students are surprised they're given an opportunity to write a statement of purpose of up to 1,000 words. So we just want to hear a little bit more about your key experiences, what your professional goals are, which climate core course you're most excited to complete. And then finally, instead of sharing with us which advanced certificate, you would share with us which dual degree you're most interested in. In this case, it would be carbon management. So feel free to review that as well. That's on the website, all the application requirements. And now I want to pivot and make sure we have plenty of time for our faculty to answer questions. And I do have a couple questions here in advance, but let's go ahead and begin. And maybe we can start with Jason, since Jason hasn't had a chance to speak yet. We'd love to hear, Jason, why is it critical to study both climate and climate change, climate science and climate change impacts on society, along with carbon management? What makes this unique combination so interesting?
Well, Alfred, I think it is a unique combination. I'd say it's like peanut butter and jelly, or if you've got nut allergies, it's cheese and crackers. It goes very well together, in the sense that carbon management is central to carbon mitigation pathways. And so understanding the details and the specifics of carbon management as a central component of mitigation pathways is critical as a depth experience, but it also connects to these broader contextual issues that I think students need to understand. How does the climate system work? What are the adaptation decisions that we'll have to make alongside different mitigation pathways? Broader sense of mitigation that includes carbon management, but all the other options within the mitigation portfolio that we also have in front of us. And then issues like finance and justice are also critical for contextualizing how we're using carbon management technologies as a critical part of decarbonizing our economy. So I think it's a no-brainer to put these two things together, and I'm so excited that it's happening. And from the climate school perspective, the other context I would add is the way that we've structured the MS in climate degree is to provide this broad context in a lot of different critical core knowledge areas within the MS in climate before our students go on to get depth knowledge in specific areas. And we've managed that in different ways through advanced certificates within our MS in climate pathways, but also through these kind of dual degree experiences. And so from my perspective, the way that I think about this, that broad contextual knowledge across the broad climate space is an important breadth area that then feeds into this critical depth area of carbon management. So I really think they go incredibly well together. I'm so excited about having these now together as a package that we can offer students, because I really do think that they are seamlessly integrated as two important knowledge areas that go together, just like peanut butter and jelly.
I love it. All right, that's excellent. So, and Shayna, what are your thoughts on the combination, this dual degree opportunity?
Well, it's hard to beat the peanut butter and jelly analogy. I think Jason said it very well. But I would just say, in terms of thinking how this program or this dual degree opportunity would prep students for the challenges and opportunities the future holds, you're coming at it with an engineering know-how from the MCM program and learning some of the physical chemical mechanisms and technologies out there, mixed with a broader sense of the earth science context, LCAs, and also just policy. There's the science and then there's the limitations, and just putting it all together would make sort of a tour de force of toolkit skill sets. Yeah, so peanut butter and jelly tour de force. Yeah.
Excellent. And maybe, out of curiosity, I think this is a very unique combination. What type of students should pursue this dual degree, and maybe not only what type of students, what type of professional opportunities exist post? Jason, do you have any thoughts on the type of students?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we are interested in interdisciplinary students that come from all different backgrounds. Shayna mentioned this in the context of carbon management. The same is true of MS and climate. Because climate itself is an interdisciplinary subject, we welcome with open arms all disciplinary backgrounds, and many of our classes are taught with no expectations about background. So, I teach more in the STEM focused part of our climate science programs, or our MS in climate program. And as somebody who teaches the quantitative methods course, I make no assumptions about the backgrounds that people come from. And what's exciting about that is we're really developing a new discipline, in the sense that we're thinking about how to put all these disparate parts together from the humanities, from the social sciences, from STEM fields, and combine them in a way that makes sense for these interdisciplinary students who are going through our programs. The students need to have technical know-how. They have to have STEM background, but they also have to be able to communicate across lots of different fields. They need to be able to think about policy, about finance. All of these things are critical. So even if you're a STEM person who wants to go into the very technical aspects of carbon management, the implementation of those technologies is dependent on law, is dependent on your ability to navigate policies, is dependent on your ability to talk about those technologies in lots of different contexts. So what we're really trying to do is accentuate some of that depth knowledge that you need to have. But another form of depth, and I always say breadth is depth in this context, you need to be able to translate across a lot of different areas and fields. And so that's really the kind of student that we're looking to produce, somebody who has the skills and depth knowledge that's important, but also somebody who has depth in translation and synergies and the ability to think across a lot of different fields in the interdisciplinary space.
Excellent. And Shayna, do you have any kind of insights on the type of students that would be a great fit for this program?
No, just echoing Jason, interdisciplinary is excellent here. I think that's what we want to foster because this cohort of students, these are your future network and the people that you will leverage in the future as you go on your career path. So I feel that the interdisciplinary aspect of engineering, scientists, policy-driven folks is wonderful. Yeah. So thank you.
And maybe we could pivot to if you could tell a little bit. I know we gave some overview about Climate School and Columbia Engineering, but could you maybe tell us a little bit more about the Climate School and Columbia Engineering, what they have done in the fields of either climate science or carbon management, particularly kind of in developing those real world solutions for industry and society? Is there any highlights, Shayna, that you would want to, for example, give as it relates to your department or your research work? We'd love to hear it.
Yeah, sure. So I can speak more from the engineering side just because that's where I sit. But in terms of our department and the School of Engineering, even as a whole, there's been quite a lot of progress with carbon storage and mineralization, for example. And I'll just start with that as an example, which is about utilizing specific types of rocks to actually turn carbon into carbonates or turn carbon into rocks. Columbia is well known for pioneering a lot of research in that area, which is very exciting. There's also, as a second bucket, a large research thrust in decarbonization of the built environment. So that's embodying carbon in cements, for example, through methods such as carbon curing of cements. And there's innovations of that coming through various departments, particularly led by civil engineering, as you'd imagine. There's also leveraging the background of the school, which remember originally was the School of Mines. There is a large program about sort of integrating carbon with in situ production of critical minerals, which, as we know, critical minerals are very necessary for the energy transition and for sustainable energy transition, but they currently, are not always the cleanest for extraction. So it's essentially, there's some great opportunities there. And then lastly, there's quite a bit going on, of course, with the carbon capture and utilization aspects. We have whole teams that are turning CO2 into fuel sources. I even heard an interesting thing recently about turning CO2, converting it and using the water vapor byproducts for use in NASA environments in space where water vapor is very important. So sorry, that was just me getting technical, but that's just a smattering of example projects. Yeah, thanks.
That's phenomenal. Thank you, Shayna. And Jason, any interesting or dynamic work at the Climate School, Lamont, of course?
Of course, it's all interesting and dynamic. I mean, Shayna's already discussed a lot of what's gone on in engineering. One interesting thing is there's also a lot of crossover. So I wouldn't think about these as sort of singular entities, but there's tremendous collaboration across schools and researchers. So some of the mineralization work that has been done was actually through School of Arts and Sciences, also through the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory. There is a big project in Iceland that some of our researchers have been involved in. We have some folks doing carbon storage in the seafloor that are doing research from shift-based observations at Lamont. And so there's lots of those kinds of things going on in collaboration with engineering and other areas and departments, and certainly within the climate school. In the more traditional climate space, it might be cheesy, but we like to say it. Global warming was first used by a researcher here within the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory. We performed the first successful ENSO predictions. Our researchers have defined the ongoing mega drought in the American Southwest, have done critical research on the stability of the Greenland and Antarctic ice sheets. The list goes on. We have a ship. Columbia has a ship. That's awesome. Just FYI, there's a lot of work that's done from that on mapping the seafloor, doing seismic studies of subsurface stratigraphy below the seafloor. There's a lot going on. So all that is to say that the scale, the breadth, the scope of what we're doing across all of these different entities at Columbia is really unmatched. Not only is it unmatched in terms of its scale, but also in terms of its impact and prestige. These are some of the best schools in our areas to really do this work, whether you're in engineering or in the climate school and its affiliated centers and departments. And to really, the reason that matters to you is both the expertise that you'll encounter in the classroom, but what I really want to impress upon you is the magnitude of the conversation that's happening here. Shana mentioned the colloquia that are organized through her program. There is something going on every hour of every day. And if you come here, the first thing you'll feel is tremendous guilt about all the things that you're missing. But as a student, engaging that energy and dynamism and activity is a critical additional piece to whatever you do in your studies. A lot of the learning here, a lot of the engagement happens outside of the classroom. And it's hard to describe it, but stepping into what's happening here, I don't think you'll find it many other places. And I can say that as somebody who works here and travels and goes to many other institutions. The scale of what's happening here at Columbia in this space around climate, sustainability, mitigation through the engineering school is just nothing you'll find elsewhere. And it's incredibly alluring to be here as a student in the midst of all of that.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Jason. The ship, we have to reference the ship. Okay, so let me, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. I'd like to now open up to specifically the student Q&As. And let's see here. I'll just go ahead, if everybody doesn't mind, I'll read the first question from Sankari asking, as this is an interdisciplinary, the type of roles graduates can transition into are very broad as shown. However, it would be helpful to understand typical types of roles that would lead into, i.e., where you would deploy the carbon management skills. So for example, the new Columbia Climate Finance course, it's clear where that would be deployed as an investment officer. Actually, it's not, I think the climate finance course is actually also extremely broad. We're actually seeing that students, not to get too off topic, but we're seeing a very diverse set of opportunities with that particular program as well. But let's see here. Climate technical officer design projects will require clear and sustainable finance flows. Let me just pause there. Do you guys have any vision for, I know it is broad, I know it's, but any vision for where students could directly apply this, the type of sectors or industries?
Shana, I'm going to pass that to you first, and then I'll follow up with something more general.
Okay, sounds good. Great question, important question. I'll go based on where some of our recent graduates are landing, and then in the categories of that. So for example, we'll have students that go to work actually in the energy industry itself, which is looking for more sustainable pathways. We'll have some students work for specifically like startup or technology startups that are in the carbon capture, carbon storage, or any of the above space. There's actually a lot of startup ecosystem here in the New York area and Northeast in general. Then some will go work for environmental consulting companies or more general consulting companies, such from a more advisory perspective. I've seen some students go to work for a government, even through national lab type agencies. And then some decide that they loved this so much that they want to go study it in a PhD environment. So those are some of the bucket categories that I've been seeing. Jason, please let me know what I've missed from that list.
That is fantastic. And having those specifics, I think, is really important. What I would say is, of course, there's been a lot of market research done on these programs, and there's clearly an expanding need for employment in these areas. Is something we hear from a lot of people, and the number of green jobs across the sectors are expanding rapidly. But one of the things I like to say, I teach in a lot of these programs, a lot of these new programs, is that part of that answer is up to our students. They're the ones who are writing the books on what you do with these degrees, because these are new degrees. It is a new field. A lot of the answers to what's needed and where people are going are things that are being demonstrated by our alumni. And so that's also where the alumni networks are critical in terms of contacting with alumni and so on. But some of what is critical here is that we know that these are skills that employers need. And one of the things that we're learning as we watch our students go on into the workforce is all the different ways in which this training is important and useful. And so I would also say and remind you that this is a brave new world in terms of what's needed and how we're addressing the climate challenge. We think we're giving you critical skills and knowledge to do that, but it's also our alumni who are showing us all the ways in which people are using these skills to go out and make change in the world, which is also critical.
Excellent, thank you. Another question I want to highlight is one of the students says, if I only join, let's say, the Masters in Carbon Management program, not necessarily the dual, is it possible to enroll in elective courses at the climate school? Shane, I'd love to hear just how flexible that journey could be. Although I don't know why you'd want to do that. I think you should take advantage of the dual, but yeah, I'd love to hear it, Shane.
Yes, I agree. The dual program sounds very advantageous, but yes, there is some flexibility through our electives, but not as much as you get from the dual degree, where you would get basically 2 educations. But I would say for our electives, once you take your core courses, we do allow 2 external electives, and those could be taking with climate school or another external program that complements your vision for your career. Within CEAS, we are fairly flexible, or within the School of Engineering and Applied Science, we are flexible with the electives generally. Yeah, hope that helps.
That was very helpful. And there's just one nuance I just want to note is that our crown jewels at the climate school are the climate core and so if the student in the audience was asking, oh, can I take climate change mitigation or climate change adaptation, those courses, and Jason knows this intimately as he's set the policy, but those courses are really for climate school students. So so if you are hungry for those courses, and I know I didn't do them justice, but like if you take a look at those, if you're really interested in those courses in particular, the dual program is the best option to pursue. So just highlighting that as well. And then we have one very specific question. I'm not sure if it's helpful for the entire audience, but there is somebody who my MS was in 1980. I was studying pollution using lasers, in which there would be, in which way would you recommend I may contribute to Columbia Climate School? Which program or study is most suitable with my background? This student, interestingly, was also enrolled at CEAS, and it looks like a doctoral candidate in the 1980s. Is there any thoughts on that? Yeah, sorry, Shana, maybe, yeah.
No, I mean, it's very specific, sounds interesting, like laser based measurements. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we have students from all backgrounds, and this sounds like it would be a great fit. I'm not sure of the specific question. Can you remind me, was it like, how would it fit, I think?
Perhaps, yeah.
Yeah.
I
I think great fit. It sounds like engineering background, and using some specific measurement skills, repurposing them for climate change study. And yeah, that sounds great. Please apply.
Excellent. And then we have one more, and I know there were a series of questions about possible PhD pathways. And both, and I should also note climate school, even though this is a professional degree, and all of our degrees are professional, we do have a history of students that complete our degree program and then a small number that do decide to pursue PhDs. But this question from Daisy in particular is it possible to transfer any research credits to a PhD program at Columbia? I can say for the climate school, we don't have a PhD program, so I can answer that definitively. I don't know if there is nuance at Columbia Engineering, Shana, to share about MS carbon management.
Yeah, so you can transfer just master's credits to a PhD, not specifically like even the research credits, just like you can apply the coursework towards your PhD degree later. And I think I see Gabby nodding, so I think I got that right.
Correct.
So yeah, so there are many students actually that in our PhD program that have come from a master's program internally like that. Not guaranteed, but it is an option. Yeah.
And then let's see, one more question that came in. Following my previous questions for the dual programs, we still need to find additional financial aid to cover the Masters in Carbon Management. Is it possible to only specifically apply to the climate school if I already applied to the Masters in Carbon Management? Yes, you are. So interestingly, this opportunity, both Gabby and myself promoted this opportunity to our current applicants as well. So you might have initially learned about this through this Columbia Engineering, or you might have learned about it through Columbia Climate School. But bottom line is, you're able to apply to both programs now. It's not too late. So for example, if you are currently admitted to carbon management and you're very intrigued by the climate schools program, you are very much more than welcome to also submit an admissions application to the MS in Climate program. If we might be evolving next year what this looks like in the process. I know Gabby wants to make this a little bit more streamlined as we do. This year, because of the nature of when we launched it, it does require 2 separate admissions applications. Ultimately, you will need to determine which school you decide to begin your journey with. So that's most important. I hope I'm answering this correctly, but also the other thing is our financial aid buckets are also separate. So for example, if you are awarded a merit scholarship at Columbia Climate School, that merit scholarship will be used and applied toward the year with which you're matriculated at the climate school. If you receive funding from Columbia Engineering, the funding that you receive from Columbia Engineering will be applied during the year with which you're enrolled in the carbon management program. I hope that answers the question. But again, our application is open. April 1st is the deadline. There is still plenty of time to apply. If you have any follow-up questions, I strongly encourage you to reach out, certainly to our admissions office at admissions@columbia.edu. Gabby, if you want to give a shout out too, by all means.
Yeah, we are available. I'll put I don't think I can send it to everyone, but our admissions email is CEASGradMit. So that's SEASGradmit@columbia.edu, CEASGradMit, and my team and I can answer any questions you may have.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, everybody. Gabby Gannon, Professor Jason Smerdon, Professor Shana Kelly, thank you all for sharing your perspectives, time, and I hope everybody that joined the call are excited and motivated. We're very excited about this new partnership with the dual degree. So please feel free to reach out. It's not an end of a conversation, it's a continuation of one. So please reach out if you have follow-up questions. Take care, everybody.